Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Terlizzi. I'm with Questel. Today we're going to have a session with my colleague, Ron Kaminecki, and the title of our session is up there. It's a nice long title, Turn Potential Patent-Related Problems into Advantages for Your Business, Engineering, and R&D Groups. Essentially, Ron's going to cover the first part of the presentation, and he's going to talk about the importance of patent prior art and getting competitive intelligence from that and trying to avoid litigation. I'll do the second part of this. I'm going to tell you about our new Orbitz Express service and how that can be helpful for the purposes that Ron is bringing up. So, Ron, just take it away. We have our next slide here, which is going to be the, excuse me. What happened?
There we go.
There we go. Okay. Take it away, Ron.
Okay, Joe, thanks. Can you hear me okay? I assume so. Okay. Well, this is kind of the layout that we're going to do. I'll be doing part 1 and Joe will be doing part 2. So let's take a look at the next slide. And typically a talk like this, people start out with all the bad news of getting sued for billions of dollars and all. I'm not going to do that, but we'll get to that later. However, I'd like to show you something that I found in the history books. There's an inventor named Alicia, and he invented a new telecommunications protocol, and he filed for patent. And another guy named Alec, he filed for a patent for the nearly identical invention on the same day, just a few hours later. All right, and this invention was revolutionary. It changed electronic communications, and it didn't take long before controversy started up over who was really the first inventor. So next slide. Because afterwards, an examiner admitted to certain illegal activities. He was actually paid by Alec to tip him off if someone were to file a patent for an invention that looked like a telephone. And Alec actually was given the drawings, supposedly, and copied them into his patent application and filed it a few hours after Alicia did, almost exactly the same invention. And it's kind of controversial on who to believe and this and that. The big bigaboo here is the affidavit filed by the examiner who said that he had a problem and he took money to do this. Okay, next slide. The invention, of course, was the telephone. Interesting. We always think that Alexander Graham Bell invented it because he had the first patent. This happened on Valentine's Day, 1876, quite a while ago. And the examiner admitted to tipping off Alexander Bell. He was known as Alec at the time. And believe it or not, the patent actually granted on March 7th, 1876. If you're doing the math, that's 3 weeks. Imagine a patent issuing in 3 weeks, especially for something like a telephone. So Alicia Gray's invention, his application was rejected, and then Alexander Bell's was approved. And it granted, and that's kind of what we've been living on all this time. Okay, next slide. Now, you can go one way or the other and say, yes, this is all made up. This is, an internet rumor or something like that. Or actually, there's some pretty good proof on both sides. But the point is that conventional wisdom about patents needs to be verified. That is, anytime you're looking at something that someone tells you or any kind of an assumption or something like that, you really need to verify it to make sure that you're not working off of something which really is a rumor or something like that. Now, if these two inventors, and they're pretty great inventors, if they had easy access to information, maybe Alicia Gray would have known about Alexander Graham Bell's invention or vice versa. What they really needed was a telephone. Unfortunately, no one had invented it until these two guys got together. Anyway, they didn't really get together. They just sort of filed for the same thing. Next page. Now, Alicia worked in Illinois at Western Electric in the northern suburbs of Chicago. And Al Bell was working, I believe it was Massachusetts at the time. So at that point, you had quite a distance between them. Nowadays, we don't really worry about distance anymore. You just need to be able to find something very quickly, but you need something fast, to find it most of us work off a laptop, but heck, it'd be nice to have something on a cell phone or something. Okay, next slide. Now, had they known each other, these are some of the patents that Alexander Graham Bell was working on. That was right around the same time as that patent for the telephone. This is an 1875 one, and notice that it's electric telegraphs. Alexander Graham Bell was working on telegraphs, and basically this is a circuit that covered different harmonics. He was trying to get sounds in. He was unable to reproduce voice, but he certainly was able to reproduce sounds, sort of like music. And he was having trouble trying to get the voice. That's kind of was the kingpin right in that. But he was getting very close. So if one had known about the other, they would have known that Alexander Graham Bell was working on this right around the same time. Okay, next slide. This is another one. You can see that this is, of course, a telegraph, just a big electromagnetic coil there and a clicker that also connects the circuit together. This was right around the same time. This is June of 1876, so just a few months later, but he obviously had been working on it prior to that. So he's getting very close to the invention because the telephone actually does use a magnetic coil at that point, use a magnetic coil. Okay, on the next slide. And also he came up with a batteries. This is a battery pack, something that you would put into a portable phone. So the point is that having identified, let's say, this inventor, you can kind of keep an eye on them, and maybe Alicia Gray might not have gotten scooped had he known about this stuff. Okay, on to the next page. Right now, we're not looking at a handful of patents, we're looking at over 80 million of them worldwide. And I found the statistics, and I really think that this is interesting, is that there are about 50% more patent citations than there are patents out there. That is, you have a lot more patent citations. These are both forward and backward citations. Then you do have patents. So this is a fairly large data mass that we can work with. Now, of course, citations are somewhat controversial, but you can find at least some similar patents by looking at citations and see what people are doing with it. And this certainly would have helped out these two inventors. Now, the Patent Office, they go back to 1976 approximately with their collection, and before that, it's a little bit sketchy. So even though that's kind of one of the source files, to get back to the Alexander Graham Bell type patents, you need to be looking elsewhere. And to this day, companies still fight over patent rights. That's kind of the big thing. So let's take a look at the next slide. You may have heard of Abbott Labs. It spun off a company called AbbVie. AbbVie has a patent. It was in 2016 was the most successful drug of last year. It accounted for about $15 billion worth of sales. That's a substantial amount of money. The earlier one was Lipitor, and that was, I think, about $12 billion. So Humira actually did a lot better. Growth a year ago was over 16% over the last quarter. So if you just looked at this, you could see that this is really, you know, the taking off, it's really a big deal. But the patent expired last month. And for those of you who know about patents, they have a lifetime, and if you don't get an extension, the thing expires. Generics can come out, obviously after FDA approval and such, but still, you can almost predict to the day when the profit margins are going to change for a company like this. Okay, next slide. So you pretty much have to keep up not only with the technology, the legal aspect of the technology too. So you have to know that, you know, here's the type of thing that's going on, and here's the day that anybody can make it. So the patents kind of gave Abbott a heads up on this. AbbVie took it over, and that represented over 60% of their revenue, that one drug. So there may be some other patents affiliated with it. You just have to, you know, do a little bit more research on it. But still, this is a substantial amount of money dealing with one particular drug. Okay, on to the next one. The thing is that a patent's more than a single document. That is, behind it, there's a lot of legal status steps that you have to worry about. You have anything as common as like a certificate of correction or a reassignment. These don't show up on the cover of the patent, they show up in the file behind it. There's also people that refer to patents. You have, again, your citations and such. You also have a patent family. You have to worry about related patents. Is it covered in another country? Was there a spin-off from a continuation in part, or better yet, from a division or a continuance, so you can kind of keep track of things? And then once you have all this stuff together, you can kind of do trend analysis, look at graphs and such. And again, this is for different needs. So like an engineer or a chemist may be worried more about the technical end. The business person may be more interested in the reference information. The information specialist may be more interested in the patent family. And of course, the business person or the manager might want to see about the trends to see whether or not they should fund something or maintain a patent or whatever. Okay, next slide. Now, patent offices are a great source for the original information. Maybe 15, 20 years ago, they started popping up with their own collections, putting in their own search systems. They keep the original material together. That is, once a patent publishes, it grants, that information is kept there. They don't change the original copy. What they do is they simply add something in the file saying that this is now changed. This is no longer owned by this person. This is owned by somebody else. One other thing that they do is they keep the original information as original as possible. So if there's a typo, they keep it in there. If there's a patent that's published under, let's say, IBM, and another patent published under International Business Machines, they see that as two entities. That is, they see that as two different companies. So even though we all know that it's the same, it's just they're taking the raw data and they're not changing it, because if you think about it, it's a legal document, and that's pretty much what's going on. Same thing with inventors' names. There's no standardization. They just take whatever that they accept. Okay, on to the next slide. So let's look at some other cases. You've probably heard about Apple and Nokia. They've sued each other over time. And in a settlement in 2011, there was a $720 million going from Apple to Nokia. That's a substantial amount of money. Earlier this month, they again sued each other over 32 patents. There was cross files going on that. So this is probably going to go on for a few years. You're talking a substantial amount of money. If there was a settlement in 2011, you can imagine what it's going for now. Another one at Apple, once you start making money, people come after you. And Apple was ordered to pay Vertnex $626 million for patent infringement. And this is after appeals. So, it's a substantial amount of money based upon just a few patents in here. If you look at the next slide, if you look at Vertnex, they have about, according to reports, 14 employees, and they rent about 5,000 square feet. They're rather $5,000 a month in rent, like one floor of a building, let's say. They own 80 patents, and they make no products. They simply enforce their patents. This is sometimes called a patent asserting entity. For good or for bad, that's their right. And here they settle out of court with Microsoft for $200 million in 2010. So you can see that you don't have to be this huge, huge company like Apple in order to make money with patents. You can be a rather small company and assert your rights on this. Now, a couple of things is that you notice that there was a settlement with Apple and Nokia. This is a settlement with Microsoft and Vertnex. A lot of patents litigation, they do settle out of court. Typically about 96% will settle. So not many want to go to verdict, because in some cases you can get triple damages. And when you're suing someone for $1 billion, triple damages does rank up quite a lot of money. So basically, people tend to settle. You really don't want to trust a jury looking at something that is as technical as a telephone patent or a new drug or something like that. Okay, next slide. There's another one, Biogen. They agreed to pay $1.25 billion to settle a patent lawsuit this month. That was one of the largest awards I could find in the last few years. That's a substantial amount of money. Of course, it might appeal and such, and it will be a few years, but still, I hate to have that hanging over my head. Okay, next slide. So you really want to avoid lawsuits. The best way is current awareness. Just keep everybody advised. I mentioned that you're technical people, you've got the engineers, you've got the chemists, you also have your managers, business people, and your lawyers and all. Keep an eye on things like this. So how can you prosecute an application if you don't know the prior art? That is, the person who's actually working on the patent needs to know what's out there, but the person who's drafting the application has patents are legal documents. They also have a lot of technical information. And I always found this fascinating that someone could be working in a lab for 5 years and will summarize 5 years of work into a 3-page patent. I just find that fascinating. Being able to write that succinctly and get that information down. And of course you have to have the best mode in there too. So looking at something as small as a patent, you can actually determine what's going on just by reading a few pages. So it's just fascinating. You get that much information in such a tiny little space. Okay, on to the next page. So not knowing about certain patents is rather dangerous. That is, if you're working in something and you get sued by somebody, that's dangerous. But knowing can be dangerous too. Because once you know about something, you have to tell about it. But I think it's better to know something and then to work with the facts rather than to just be blind to something out there. The big thing is knowing where the white space is. Now, white space is you can find patents around an area, and there's a need in between them, but no one has come up with a patent in that particular area. That's called white space, where you have a problem looking for a solution. Black space would be where we don't know what the problem is, we don't know what the solution is, we just don't know anything. But white space is kind of the place where you want to be looking at. So if you can actually look at some charts, some graphics, some trends and such, you can determine whether or not you're missing something, there's an opportunity laying out there. And identifying competitors is one thing, but if you think about it, what is a competitor? If someone working in the same area, wouldn't that be a great person to maybe do a joint venture with, or maybe a potential licensee? Of course, they could be competing with you on, using your own patent against you, so you might want to find a potential licensee who doesn't necessarily compete with you directly. But this could also be a potential litigant. That is, you typically don't sue the person living across the city from you. You sue the person living next door to you. So typically, if you know who your competition is, you know who either your licensees are or your potential litigants are. In fact, I looked at this years ago, and I remember that if you look at the people who cite companies, if you just look at who cites whom, and you keep track of that, that list will represent about 40% of the litigation between the two companies. That is, if you look at who's citing whom, you could determine almost who's going to be suing you in the next few years. It was about a 40% overlay, as I remember. And I just found that kind of interesting, is that you can look at your citations and say, gee, we're going to be seeing these guys in court in a couple of years unless we're careful. Okay, on to the next slide. So technical staff, management staff, they have to be aware of patent information. Of course, they have different needs, but they need to at least know that this stuff is out there. Your legal staff, pretty much they try to keep up on things, but they're just given stuff to write, and they're given the prior art, and they're given the searches, and they have to prosecute the application, and they have to get the things in on time. So having easy access makes their job a little bit easier because they can get things done a lot faster. Now, the problem is patent searching can be very technical. Sometimes you're looking at like Marcuse structures, you're looking for something really technical. It might be best to have a dedicated group to really focus on this, just the patent searching part. But in general, let everybody have access to patent information. Just let them mess around with it, be able to look up an inventor's name, a company name, or maybe some subject term, something like that. But when it gets down to filing, then you want to get a professional in there to actually look at it in some great depth. Okay, on to the next page. Now, a lot of people say, gee, I can get it for free. And there's a lot of great sources out there. Google Patents is one. Problems with it is it's just not as up-to-date as you may like it to be. You're not paying for it, but then again, what's going on with the information? It's known that Google will publish the most searched aspects from time to time. And you look at some of the searches that people do, and it'd be terrible if you're doing a patent search there and happen to see it being published. Also, you don't know what they're doing looking at your information. These other sources, like the USPTO and EPO's Espasnet and WIPO's Patent Scope, these are government agencies. They do a great job putting the stuff up, but in the case of USPTO, their interface comes from about the mid-90s, a little bit clunky. You've got applications in one file and granted patents in another one. So you have to do two searches, and it doesn't have a great way of saving a strategy. Espasnet and Patent Scope, they have more sophisticated interfaces, but still, you're looking at something that you have to look at multiple different sources in multiple languages and such. Someone actually mentioned that if you search one of these sources too many times, you start looking like a bot, and they start giving you grief on how many times you're coming in. I haven't run into that yet, but I've heard that happen. And there's a lot of other sources too, and they come and they go. Okay, on to the next slide. The point is, you just can't afford to ignore patents. Information really has to be from around the world. You have to find everything. It has to be as up-to-date, it has to be clean. You can't just use the raw data and expect to find anything unless you're going to accommodate all the little nuances and spelling variations and such. Now, there's specialized tools that make access a little bit easier for different individuals, and vendors have different needs than attorneys do, and managers have different needs altogether, and you just want to have something that works across the board like this. Okay, on to the next one. This is something you probably don't want to see your name on the non-receiving end of it. This is an actual, from a jury. This is actually the jury instructions, and it boils down to this. It's funny, you're spending millions of dollars on litigation, and it goes to a group of peers, and they're given instructions. And here the 7th instruction is, what's the total amount of damages this company should owe that one? And somebody hand wrote in almost $500 million. I don't know how they arrived at that, but that's something you really don't want to see your name on the other side of. I mean, that's got to be some scary stuff in there. Unless, of course, you're receiving a check for that amount of money, but I just find that kind of interesting, that a little handwritten thing there kind of decides the fate of 2 different companies. Okay, on to the next slide. So recall Alexander Graham Bell's invention of the telephone, and he had filed for the patent supposedly on the same day and maybe ripped off Electric. Well, he also filed, this is A.G. Bell, he also filed for a flying machine right around the time when the Wright brothers were patenting their flying machine. So I don't know whether or not, I got to check whether or not those dates are the same, but who knows, maybe that happened again. You never can tell. But it's just interesting that Alexander Graham Bell made a telephone and a airplane. All right, Joe, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, thank you, Ron. One thing I neglected to say at the very beginning of the session is that we have a Q&A box, and if you have any questions, we're going to leave about 15 minutes at the end of the session for answering questions. So they could be directed to Ron or they could be directed to me. So just take account of that. So all the things that Ron was talking about deal with knowing patent information and getting patent information to help you. We're releasing a new product. It's called Orbitz Express, and it really is more geared for an end user. If you are an Orbit Intelligence subscriber, you will have access to Orbitz Express through your same ID. It's just a different URL that you go to. So you may occasionally want to use it. One of the main reasons might be that we have a mobile version of it. So you can access it on your telephone or on your iPad as well as your laptop. So we'll take a look at that. What we're going to do is going to run through some slides, and then we'll go live and actually show the service and then answer the questions. So Orbitz Express is really a front end for our FAMPAT database, which you access through Orbit Intelligence. The records are in families. If you're not familiar with the patent family, it's basically where that invention is protected everywhere in the world, whether it be an application or whether it has been granted. So some of the advantages of Express is that we do put those records in families. In some of the other free sites, you may not find that. It's also highly secure. So you're going to an HTTPS environment. You're also going into an ID and password. And it's up to date. So that the information that goes in Express is going to be at the same time that it goes into our intelligence product, which is weekly, and it would be up to date. You also find that you could use it for collaboration. So the work files can be accessed in Orbit Express. So if someone shares a work file that uses Orbit Intelligence, they could actually share it with someone that just may have access to Orbit Express. There's also some features that we put in, such as the ranking features, that allow you to rank the records as well, and we're looking at adding a lot more. This is the first version of Express, and I'm sure we'll be getting a lot of feedback on what people will want to see in this product. The last thing here listed is the visualization charts. So this is really a nice tool to have on a product like this. It has about 7 or 8 charts and graphs that gives you a nice overview of the results and their dynamics. So you can click on the charts to actually go in and see the records that you will click on if you click on a bar, say. As far as the coverage goes, as I said, the same coverage that we have in our FAMPAT database. So we cover about 100 countries for bibliographic information, and then we have about 20 full-text sources. You can use this for PDF copies as well, so you can download copies of the patents. One of the nice features of this service is that we've standardized the assignee names. So you won't find that in Google Patents or the U.S. Patent Office. Ron brought up that example with IBM versus International Business Machines, and we would have standardized that. So you would get the results if you typed in IBM or International Business Machines. We also put our independent claims in there, something that we put in FAMPAT, and we've translated, machine translated into English a lot of the foreign data, such as the Asian data from China and Japan and Korea and Russia and so on. So there's 2 modes to the search. There's an easy search and advanced search, similar to what we have in Orbit Intelligence now. And the easy search works pretty much the same way. You have one simple field to search. And then the advanced search is not quite as advanced as Orbit Intelligence, but will allow you to search by different fields, such as the assignee and country and date and so on, as well as text. So you don't need any knowledge of field codes or query language, although that always helps if you do have that knowledge. So this is what the opening page will look like. This is the easy search, and as I said, you have one box and you can put anything in there. It will take operators. Someone asked about that yesterday, and you could put operators in there. You could put your /TI and so on. And it does automatically, as far as I understood, add truncation and do certain things to give you the best results. So just like our easy search does on our Orbit Intelligence product, you should get maximum results without worrying about words not being pluralized and things like that. So this is the simple search, and then if you want the advanced search, you would click on the advanced one here. The advanced search looks like this, where you can put in something for text, and then you can put in your additional criteria here, and say you want the current assignee to be Microsoft, and then you click on search. So this is what the hit list looks like. So this search was done on artificial intelligence in general, or AI, and we got about 8,000 results. It gives you the most relevant results based on criteria that we've built in at the beginning here. And if you need to go, or if you want, you can go, of course, into the record by clicking on the particular title. So you get an abstract and you get some general information here. You do get some images and so on, front page image. So if you click on a title, then this is what a record looks like. So this happens to be the second record in that set. So you're going to see the family. You're going to see the PDF icons here. You'll also have the high-resolution images. So this is the first one, but there's 31 here, and if you click on one, you can zip through all of them. And you have your patent assignee, your inventors, your abstract, and then down here you have your independent claims, or you have all of your claims. And you also can get the description details as well. Now, there's an additional feature we put on here for doing what we call a similarity search or finding similar patents. Similar to what we have in Orbit Intelligence, it basically operates the same way, but it's a really nice feature, especially if you're an end user and you're not that familiar with keyword searching and how to go about it. And what it does is it gives you a set of results based on the particular patent that you're focused on, and that set of results is based on the classifications that were in this patent, the citations, and the concepts that we put in this patent. So it will give you a set of records, and it does a pretty good job with that. Okay, so the other feature that's pretty important about this is the chart feature. And so if you have a set of, say, 8,000 results and you want to get an overview, click on Charts, and it's going to open up an overlay menu, and it'll have about 7 graphical representations that you can then call up. So it looks like this, and you'll see a listing here. So you have things like the investment trend over versus priority year and versus publication year, R&D locations, market and competitor locations, top players, the technology overview, the top players' investment trend, and technologies over time. So you can just click on one of those. And if you go to the first one, I think is the priority year for this set. So you can see the trend, and obviously artificial intelligence is expanding quite a bit in the past few years. You can see if there might have been a dip. This was a strong period around 2011. You can click on these individual bars and bring up those particular records. You can click on as many as you want, and then say click to select, and it'll sum up all of those, and you'll have a separate set of records. Here's another chart. This one is a bubble chart, and it shows the assignees over time. So it shows which assignees are working and what are their strong periods, and so we see Microsoft down here, and the SGCC, the Sacred Corporation of China. If, again, we want to go into a particular set of records, we would just click on the particular bubble or set of bubbles. Here we've got IBM patents for 2015, and there's 5 of them, 5 families, 5 inventions, and these are the 5 inventions from IBM. Now, another nice feature that we have on the left here is the ability to access lists and work files. We call it My Projects, and work files can be sent by experts to an end user account, as well as lists. And well, lists can't be shared, but work files can be shared. Lists, however, since this works with both Orbit Intelligence and Orbit Express work together on the same ID, if you have lists on your Orbit Intelligence account, you can access them on Orbit Express. Same with work files. So if I go into a particular work file, I get a set of results here. And what we did with the work files in the list is the ability to also search within those. So you have a little entry box here, and you can put terms in here, and then you can base your search just on that particular set of records as well. So basically, you can collaborate with an expert or with an end user with this product. So we haven't worked out all the details, and I know that we're going to be adding more to this, but our alerts have the ability to go into work files. So you should be able to set up receivers for those work files or end users, and they should be able to receive the alert results in this format. And you know, one of the things that we have is the ability then to also rank the records. So if they didn't want to use our work files in Orbit Intelligence and a little simpler interface, they could use this. So it's a 5-star system, and you can put up to 5 stars by just clicking on the stars there. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is go live and just show you, give you a little feel for it. So you're going to go to express.orbit.com, and this is the opening page. So you'll just click on search, and then you can enter your terms. So when you start to enter, you'll see that it saves what you might have done recently. So some of you may have children that have gotten these, but kind of an interesting invention right now, the virtual reality headset. So we get 2,337 results, and you know, we can scan through. We see that there's some Chinese results. There's a German one here from Audi, and we can go down a little bit. I'm going to go down to a U.S., which should pop up soon. Okay, and this one happens to be the U.S. virtual lasers for interacting with augmented reality environments. So let's click on that one. And so we can see that there's 2 applications in the family. There's a US and there's a PCT. It's from this company here. And if we go down further, we can see the independent claims. We can also open up the tab for all the claims, or we can go to the description for the background of the invention and summary and detailed description, and so on. We also have the images here, and you can go through your images. I don't know if there's a way to rotate. Oh, yes, there is. All right. I figure they have to have that. Okay. And you also have your PDF icons here. Everything works very quickly. Really happy with the speed so far since I've been testing this out. You'll see that it's quite fast, robust. And we have this Similarity Search, which is really nice, as I mentioned. So it's only going to work with one record. So if we wanted to find similar to this, we just click on that. And this is the record that we started with. And then we'll see sports training systems and so on. And if any of you have used our Similarity Search, I think you'll know that it does quite a nice job. So you're going to get the most similar ones as close to the top as possible. I'm going to go down to my projects. So here you can see the work files. So these are the work files that I have on my account. And you'll see the icons for lists and work files. If you're not familiar with lists and work files on our, and you don't have a subscription to Orbit Intelligence, the lists are just something that the user will create for their own help. It works within the search environment. The work files can be shared, and they can be shared with anyone that the user sets up as being either a reader or someone that has an Orbit account. There's 2 levels for that. And you know, of course, if you click on one of these, we'll click on the work files. Oh, I think this is the list. Sorry. The list, you also have the ability to search within the list. And the field searching, I believe, should work on this as well. So let me just look here. No, that's not set up for this one, but sorry about that. Shouldn't have been that. But anyway, yeah. So you could, but you could search the text within here, and that's basically. It does. Oh, I see. It's just not going to do the tab. Okay. The field tab, field code. It would have done that. The other one, terabyte. Sorry. No, not available. Okay. We'll have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure. You should be able to search within there. Let me go to the work files. I know that usually works. And we'll do robot here. And that one, we do get 7 results for robot. Okay. And just so you see within a work file, you do see we have the stars and everything will drop down as well. It's expandable and so on. There's also a help screen here. It'll give you a little information, some of the background. And this is your log off down here. Okay, so I think I've run through, as you can see, it's a fairly simple interface. We've tried to simplify things as much as possible for someone that doesn't use our service as often as some of our other heavy-duty searchers. So we have about 15 minutes for some questions. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you, let me just check our little box here, and we usually have a bunch of things in here. So I'll start, and I'm going to read the questions to you since I know you can't see them. And if it's a question for Ron, or I think it's for Ron, I will definitely bring it over to him. So the first one says, I'm still having trouble exporting work files. When I select PA on the custom screen, I end up with all PAH. When I unselect PA, this does not happen. Thoughts. And sometimes this is 15 plus columns. Okay. Sure. All right. This is a little bit more involved, but it actually will illustrate something, so I will talk about this a little bit. So we have an export feature in our work files. We don't have the export on this service, but if I go to Orbit Intelligence, I can export, which brings up a point here. Anything that you see that I do on Orbit Express is going into your search history in Orbit Intelligence. And so if you wanted to export these records, you could do that in Orbit Intelligence. But what you need to do is you need to log out of this because you're using the same account. And then you can log back in to your regular Orbit account. So now we're in Orbit Intelligence. And if you look at my search history, you'll see some of the things that I just done here on Orbit Express. So we have our search history here. And I was accessing some lists, and I did a similarity search, and I did the virtual reality headset search, and you can actually see behind the scenes if it's searching in a sentence, if you're familiar with our command line and so on, it's going to give you that. What the question was referring to is actually a work file question, and so I'm going to go over to the work files. and I'll go into one of the work files here. I'm just going to select a few records that I would be exporting. And if I go to the export and I go to the Excel, what the question was referring to was the patent assignee field. So the patent assignee field actually gives you about 5 columns, or it looks like 4 columns here. When I hold this over, I can see that there are 4 codes, and so that means there's going to be 4 columns. So the way to avoid getting 4 different columns for assignees is to actually use the other box and then to put in PA, which is just the current patent assignee. And if you can mix and match and check other boxes here, I put in all my codes here, but that just happens to be the last export that I did, so it remembers that. So that's the answer to that question. I knew it was going to be a little bit involved, but it actually shows that you can toggle between Orbitz Express and Orbit Intelligence. Okay, let's go to the next question. Okay, so the next question I see here is, how do you keep up with information that is in the 18-month blackout time from filing to publication? As far as our information that's in these databases, we only have published information. So we really don't have anything unless it is published. But one way I can think of that you could monitor that is we do have another service called Legal Status Alerts, and that allows you to run alerts on filing numbers, and it will give you information on any actions that take place within the Patent Office before that filing is published. So you could monitor using the Legal Status Alerts, and that is accessed under Alerts Legal Status here. But you do have to subscribe to that in order to get access to that. That's an additional service that we offer. Ron, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. You might.
Well, again, it's the stuff that's in public pair. So it's you know, any of that information that you'd find, because no one's going to have it before it's made public. The only thing you might find would be those D0 documents from Great Britain. You know, the UK office publishes a list. I don't know exactly when that list comes out, but I believe it's before the 18 months, because we do have that in the database, and people call when they try to get a notice that there is something out there, and then they try to get the document, and there isn't a document. And that'll be located as published application with a D0 kind code on it. That would be about the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
And so basically that'd be one way of finding that information, but you're not going to find much more than what we have online. There isn't a document for it.
Right. Okay. The next question is the data coverage different? So I think the question is referring to, is the data coverage different in Orbit Express than it is in Orbit Intelligence? And no, it isn't. It's SPAM-PAT accessed through just a different means. So the coverage is going to be the same. Okay, the next question is how do you create a work file and work file folders? Okay, so that's a good question. You cannot, in Orbit Express, create a work file. You have to be sent a work file, or you have to create the work file in Orbit Intelligence, and then you can visualize it in Orbit Express. From what I understand, they will bring that capability very soon to Orbitz Express. But right now, we don't have that capability. So you'd have to create the work file in Orbit Intelligence, or you'd have to have an expert send you a work file if you were an end user. And someone could send it to you, or it could be from an alert. Like I said, the alert could be set up to go directly to work files. If you need to know how to actually do it in Orbit Intelligence, we're in Orbit here. So if you want to create a work file, you know, you may have a set of records. I'll just bring up something here.
So, Joe, while you're doing that, you could basically have someone send you something while you're on the train, and you could work on it on the train.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Yeah, so there is possibilities. I mean, you know, people say, well, why do we create this? I mean, the mobile version to actually be able to access your account in a mobile version is just a help right there, and it does take the qualifiers. It didn't take it within the set that I was in, because I was in the work files. But if I start at the easy search or the advanced search, it will take the field codes if you want to get a little more specific about, you know, how you're searching. It will actually do that. So yeah, so if you wanted to put something into a work file, you know, you would just select the records, and then you go to the first icon here, and should bring up a screen, okay? And then you click on the folder here, and you can create the new work file. So you have to name the work file, and once you name it, you'll see it there, highlight it, and then say OK, and it will send it to the work file. So if I look at the menu, oh, sorry, those are only for lists. If I look at the Explorer tab, I should see that work file there. Okay. That was the last question I saw, but let me just see if there's anything else. How to search within a work file. Okay. Well, that you can do on Express. That we did. I can maybe show you once again, but since we're in Orbit Intelligence, you can also do it if you are in the work files here and you want to search. You just click on Search over here. And then this one gives you a huge screen to work with. So you would check the work files that you want to search in, and you know, uncheck everything, and then you can go down your list. Say, I wanted to search within these work files, and then I can put the terms that I'm searching. I think that's going to be in the set because it's headlines adhesives. Yeah, I think that's not a good headline for that one. But you get the idea, and then you would get your results here. So if we go back to Orbit Express, since that's really more of our focus for today, let me just show it once more. So we'll go into Express. I guess I can go directly to my project since the work files are there. Sometimes I need to log in twice. Sorry about that. Let me just try once more. So it seems to be better to log in if you need to see that page with the ID and password. Let's try this again. Okay. So So I went down from 52 to 19 results by just doing polysaccharide. Some of the truncation is working right now, but let me just try that. The question mark works, so you can pluralize it too. Okay. See if there's any other questions. When is your next training webinar on orbit intelligence? Well, we've been doing these monthly, so we'll probably have another one towards the end of February. We usually do 2 and repeat them, and we focus on a different aspect of our services. So we will let you know. All right, so we're just about at 3 o'clock. But thank you for participating in the session, and if you have any other questions, you can let us know. We are going to send out the presentation and also the answers to the questions in a text format for you as well. Okay, thanks a lot. Have a nice day.
All right, thank you all.
Bye, Ron.
Bye-bye.